So we're now going to go on to something quite challenging in that we want the bird to go up and then come back down. So how are we going to do that? Well, we could tell it to do that, for example, 10 or 20 times we want you to move in an upward position, and then 10 or 20 times we want you to move in a downward position. And because that would be a set amount of times, we could use a for loop traditionally to do something a set amount of times. The problem with us using a for loop is that if we had a for loop, for example, in the while loop, that would happen 20 times, but before any of this had actually moved. Because it would keep doing the for loop before it continued on, looped back round and carried on with these steps. Which is the same problem if we ran a new sub and had a for loop within it. It would do all that job lots and lots of times before it went through and moved everything else. So we kind of need something to iterate as part of the while loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new sub that checks to see if the bird is flapping. So I'm going to call it flap. I'm sorry, because it's a sub, we must call it sub flap. And I'm going to say if it is flapping. So I'm going to have a new variable called isFlap, which just means is the bird flapping. So to start off the game, we're going to say the bird is not flapping. So isFlap, is the bird flapping, is false. So if isFlap equals true, so if the bird is flapping, then we will move in a upward direction. So we need to change bird y change. We need to change that to, if it's going to move upwards, it'll be taken away 1 each time. Else, if it's not true, i.e. it's false, then we'd like to say bird y change equals +1. End my if statement, end my sub. Now, at the moment, we've never given any chance in the program for isFlap to become true. So let's maybe do that in here. Let's say if the key is pressed down, why don't we just say that isFlap equals true. So now, if somebody presses the key down, then it should suddenly start moving the upward direction. So if the key is pressed down, our event will trigger to run this function, and it will say, right, well, to start with the game, it's going to say isFlap equals false, and then it's going to say if isFlap equals true, then it'll do this, but previously it would have just been moving it downwards. So let's just try that. So it should just fall until I press the space bar, and then hopefully, oh, we've got an error. I missed a then on my if statement, something that you don't get in many other languages. If isFlap equals true, then, there we go, and we'll run that again. And if I hit the space bar, oh, it's already going up in the first place, so we probably want to make sure it's going down in the first place, which is our problem. So I'm just going to set the starting number of bird y change to be 1, and then hopefully if I press the space bar, nothing happens, which was a little bit disappointing. So if the key down is pressed, isFlap becomes true. Oh, we never actually run this sub. That was very silly of me. So this sub called flap, we never actually check it or run it. So of course we need to put that into our while loop. So let's come into here and put flap in place there. Hopefully now, hit the space bar and it starts to move up. If I hit it again, it should still keep moving up. The reason for that is we've just said if we do press the space bar, we just change isFlap to true. So it just keeps setting it to true, which means it keeps meeting this criteria. So now our problem is there's nothing that eventually tells it to stop being true and to be false. So that's our next step.